I have kind of thrown you in it, right? Misdirection with the Henry, then into the Mac, then onto tokens.
All right, Kev, tell us
Yeah,
about your Hoover.
I'm a Hoover. So we've just bought a Henry,
Wait a minute, like an actual Henry.
an actual Henry.
Can you still buy those things? I
Yeah,
thought they were
yeah,
like from the 1950s, and
they are. But it's what all the cleaners use, right? And we got a Dyson. We've got two Dysons, and we've had a load of work done. There's plaster dust everywhere. Buggered up the Dyson basically. So emergency, can't hoover anything. Buggered up Dyson. Fed up with Dyson going wrong because I have to take it all apart and wash it all out. So emergency buy a Henry because everyone always turns up with a Henry, right? If you get a builder in or a cleaner in, they always turn up with a Henry. So they must be good. So yeah, the doorbell rang the other day, and a big package arrived, and I was very excited. But then I realised it was the Henry, and I wasn't as
they still got
excited
their
anymore.
eyes on.
Yeah, yeah. But the story is really that I didn't want it to be the Henry. I've got another big package on order that I'm expecting through the post, and this is my shiny new Mac. And I was really hoping it was
Ooh,
going to be my shiny new Mac, but it turned out that it was my replacement Hoover. So a bit disappointing, slightly less RAM.
slightly less RAM. This has become, it's not so much the next thing now as the last thing then, isn't it? We're talking about the Henry.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a global RAM shortage because they're building all these AI data centers, and so the cost of everything is basically doubled. If you go on Amazon and you try and buy SSD hard drive, it's twice the price that it used to be a few months ago. And basically, Apple has stopped selling all of their top tier Macs, the ones with more than 128 gigs of RAM in, and even the ones with 128 gigs of RAM basically it's starting to disappear now. You can't buy a Mac Studio, I don't think, anymore with 128 gigs. The only one you can buy is a M5 MacBook Pro, which is what I'm expecting through my door. And I'm very excited.
That's exciting. I mean, but surely you just do admin and emails these days. I mean, what on earth are you going to do with 128 gigs of Apple M5?
Right. So maybe this is like a fly on the wall about how the CTO job is changing, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, like a couple of years ago, it turns out I bought myself the shittiest MacBook you could possibly buy. Everyone else in the organization is getting these amazing machines. And at that point, I obviously thought, you know what? I just need something that can help me navigate around a spreadsheet, do some video calls and do my emails. So I bought this really shitty Mac, and it has a whole 8 gigs of RAM and a whole 250 gigabyte hard drive. And then AI happened. And I said to someone the other day, I was on a call, and I said, look, I haven't written any code for a decade. And in the last 6 months, I think I have written or co-authored, should we say, more code than I've ever written in my entire life. So all of a sudden, I'm running, loads of different models. I'm creating loads of stuff. I'm installing loads of dev tools. I have run out of all of my disk space. I've got nothing left. I can't even install updates anymore. That was the thing that really pushed me to buy this new Mac. I can't, and I've been doing a load of experimentation with um, local models, local LLMs, the ones that you can just about run on your own hardware. Except I can't. I can't run anything, so I'm having to run the local LLMs via a cloud service because my Mac is so pants. So that's really what I'm changing. That's what I'm changing as of whenever this thing comes.
So you got these local LLMs now. Are they any good? What's driving the exploration of those?
So I think it's multifaceted. So I think there's a lot more interest in local LLMs right now because the AI companies, the frontier AI companies, are starting to really try and turn the dial up on the spend. So all of these kind of all-you-can-eat plans are slowly disappearing. And if you're a solopreneur or a hobbyist, then you can pretty much still get one of these plans. If you're a business, they're making it very, very difficult for you to do that. And at the same time, they're 10xing the cost of what you're paying on the non-plan version. So when you're bidding against an API, which is what a lot of businesses do, then it's metered. Essentially, you're paying per token, and a token is a word, and it's one cost for the tokens that you type in, and it's one cost for the tokens that the LLM spits out, and they're really expensive. So to put this into perspective, on the $20 Codex plan, you can run this little tool, and it can tell you how much you're actually spending if that was in token costs. And so for the and I don't do anywhere near as much development as our engineers do, but I was spending about $200 to $300 a month on tokens, and OpenAI was charging me $20 a month on on the plan. So that's why the AI companies hate these plans. That's why they're all moving over to this kind of token-based costing, and that's really what's part of what's fueling this interest in local models. Because if you can run a model locally on your machine and it's good enough, then you're not paying the token costs.
You can see why these organizations are doing the bait and switch. I mean, also they wanted mass adoption. They've got mass adoption. Now they need to try and recoup the cost back because obviously we've been heavily subsidized using our tokens for a while. But I guess this is also why any normal person like myself gets internally frustrated with whether it's Codex or Claude saying, sorry, your tokens for this session have expired. You've run out of tokens.
Yeah,
I guess switching to the
yeah.
API route, as you go route gets rid of that, right? But ends up costing
Yeah, and what do people do now? Like when they run out of tokens, they go, "Oh, can't do any more work. Go and
it's
put the
like
kettle
go
on."
for a walk. It's like when these, like it used to be a power cut or something, and everyone would have to go outside and do something. Now it's like I've run out tokens. It just happens like 4 times a day now.
I think the interesting thing for me is how do these local LLMs compare to the frontier models? You're now having to pay significant amounts for access to the frontier models. So are they significantly better than the local LLMs? Now, that's always been a bit of a no-brainer. Yes, massively. They're massively better. Except there's a few things that have happened recently which have started to change the game. Um, if you can get hold of a beefy enough machine, let's put some context around that actually. These models need loads and loads of RAM. It doesn't matter how much, and it doesn't how much like normal RAM you've got. They need video RAM, so they need the special kind of RAM that only really sits on your GPU, and they need like all of it. So if there's 16 gigabytes worth of model, it needs 16 gigabytes worth of RAM to fit itself in. It needs to load its entire self into the VRAM. One of the reasons that Macs have become so popular and are selling out left, right, and center is because they've got this thing called unified memory. And it means there is just one type of memory, and the Mac can decide to use it for video memory or normal memory. So if you get 128 gigabyte of RAM, it's almost the same as getting a gigabyte video card, which don't exist. So the Macs allow you to actually run some pretty beefy local models. That's number one. Number two, the local models themselves have got loads smarter. So they've started to do this thing called active parameters. So if you think about a parameter like a neuron in the brain, right? More parameters, more intelligence. So the frontier models, the OpenAIs, the GPTs and the Claudes of this world have like in the trillions of parameters, around a trillion, maybe more. GPT-4, I think, had 200 billion, 400 billion, something like that. The ones you can run locally, the sweet spot for that is around 30 billion parameters. But you'd still need, like, it's very roughly about a gig per billion. So you'd still need 30 gigs of RAM to make that work. But what they've done with the new models is they've got the kind of the complete brain, like the 30 billion, and then they've got a number of active parameters. So depending on your query, depending on what you're putting into it, it can switch on a bit of its brain at the time. And so it might only have 4 billion active parameters or 16 billion active parameters, which means basically that it just runs a lot better and a lot faster and needs less memory. And now it's kind of possible to do more with these local models on a local machine.
And I assume these local models as well are not they're not just slimmed down versions of a frontier model. They're not kind of surely they're specializing. You know, you have like a model which is good at legal stuff, and a model which is good at coding, and a model which is good at solving your mental health issues or whatever you use
And
your AI.
I don't blame you for assuming that. That would seem very sensible, but no, they're a mixture of experts or kind of full fat. They do everything. So I think there's still space for local models that are very specialized around one particular task. So you see local models that are good at coding, like Quen Coder 3.6, Gemini 4, but they can still do all the other stuff as well. And so their brains are full of many things, not just coding things. So maybe there's still an opportunity there for a smaller, more powerful model that is very specialized in code or in a particular language. I don't really know if that's feasible or that how it works. But what you are starting to see and what's happened over the last couple of weeks is that the OpenAI themselves have just released a very small specialized language model specifically trained to handle PII data, personal identification data.
Yeah.
So it can look through documents and it can look at stuff which could be sensitive and it can flag it and redact it and that kind of thing. It's specifically for that. It's only something like 1.5 billion parameters. So using my very rough yardstick, 1 to 2 gigs of VRAM, which means it could run on most hardware and can be used in production systems to do that very specific task. So there are specific specialized local LLMs coming out now, but they have to be specifically trained. And I think it costs so much to train these models. I think that's why they're not necessarily going down that route. They're kind of just distilling everything into a smaller model.
I mean, this must be becoming a really prescient issue in larger organizations. I mean, obviously, your experience is one of leader of a relatively smaller organization, and you're probably one of the heavier, or you are a heavy user at the moment. And you've noticed cost implications. First maybe it's the frustration that you're running out of tokens, then you realize that switching is going to cost a lot more than you're willing to pay. Or you'd rather pay, if you scale that up to an organization of 10,000 people, 100,000 people, a global entity, with the continued drive to try and use more and more AI throughout
Mm.
processes and day to day, this must be costing the earth. I mean, the meme that was going around LinkedIn and other places was, the CFO pulling his hair out because the tokens are now costing more than the employees that he replaced them with.
Mm.
There's got to be a reckoning which is coming here, where someone's going, and maybe it is local models. Is local models the way that these organizations are looking at this, or are there other
Well, I
kind
think
of, I guess, like proxy layers or?
that's why the interest in them has peaked again. But yes, your point. I think Uber, wasn't it last week, said something like that they've had to 5 times their budget, their spend for AI because they've spent their entire budget already. And I think that's, if Uber are kind of making those budgeting mistakes, you can imagine that other companies are. I think that the other thing that's driving it, which I've said before, is the way we're using AI has completely changed in 2 years. So we're not just chatting to it anymore and getting it to summarize a meeting. We're giving it a task and telling it to go away and come back an hour later with a result. And then when it does, we tell it to go away and do another task. So we're treating it like labor. And these things are now always on and always working. There's an infrastructure cost for that. Labor is expensive. Machine labor is less expensive, but it's still got a cost. I think that factors in. And I think the third thing that really changes the dynamic is, yes, you want to use more of it. Like, why do I just want to restrict my use of it to do the things that I would have normally done? I want it to do that plus more. If it can do stuff intelligently and in an automated way, then why can't it work while I'm asleep? Or why can't I automate all of these other processes too? And so there's this huge, huge demand, which is just getting bigger. And the more validation we want to do, the more correct we want the outputs, the more thinking these models need to do on our behalf. So that's driving up the usage. And if you want unmetered usage because you just want to scale it infinitely, then obviously, if you can have something that runs 24/7 on a machine on your desk somewhere, that's quite a desirable.
Yeah, I saw. I mean, we've talked about it previously, but we've been playing this game of chicken with the frontier model providers in terms of the free ride that they're giving us all. But and they've been assuming, or there's been some widespread assumptions or hopes maybe that the costs were going to come down quicker than our demand for the usage was going up. It doesn't seem to have quite worked out that way, but the costs are changing a little. I mean, I did see that again. It was Anthropic. I think they just announced a deal with um, what is Elon's
SpaceX.
SpaceX?
Yeah,
Yes, they
SpaceX.
just announced a deal with SpaceX to use the. I'll get the name wrong. Is it the Colossus or the? He's got some space sci-fi name for his data center,
Yeah, I don't know.
which they reckon is going to give you twice as many tokens for the current cost, but as part of that deal. Now, it's caused a bit of a furore. Do Anthropic users really want to be using, Elon's data centers and, all that kind of stuff? And there's been a bit of, politically, charged conversation around that. But it does seem that that capacity has opened up opportunity for Anthropic to, at least as a headline, bring that cost down. I guess we'll see a bit more of that, but there must be a ceiling to that, right? We are using far more than is available for $20 a month.
Yeah, I think best case is it will equalize. The costs will keep coming down as our usage keeps going up. But right now, I think demand is outstripping supply, and that's why even the frontier companies are feeling the pinch. Before that deal, Anthropic did not have enough compute. They could not serve the amount of users that they had at the level they wanted to serve them, which is why everyone started complaining that their usage limits were running out after an hour. And this deal sees those usage limits double for no more headline cost. So yeah, I guess it's interesting, isn't it? Because it tells you what those frontier companies are factoring in to what's driving the price of those token costs in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, what you mentioned, that there's a complexity to the tasks that we're now looking at to trying to ask the AI to do. We're no longer just checking email or summarizing transcripts or writing notes up for us. And as that complexity grows, I guess, with the maturity of the organization using AI, have you got what kind of examples have you got of stuff that you've had it doing that you weren't doing with it, 6 months ago?
Good question. I think I'm not sure it's really changed all that much for me because the majority of my usage is around um, getting it to write code, and that's always been quite a long running task. I think the only way my usage would have changed is that I'm doing that a lot more. Um, I'm encoding a lot more of the stuff that I would have prompted over and over and over again into skills, which I can just invoke multiple times, and they'll go off and they'll do the same thing, and they'll come back an hour later with a result. So, which is interesting in itself because I think earlier in this epoch, we were thinking we'd have these multi agents things, and that would be how it scales out. But actually, it turns out if you've got an agent platform, quite often a skill is enough. It encodes that intelligence and that workflow into a repeatable unit of work. So yeah, using a lot more skills, doing a lot more kind of, I guess, more production ready development, if you like. So not just getting it to bash out examples that look cool but then fall over, but actually figuring out how to make that robust. So now I think I can answer your question. In order to make that robust, you need to do so much more validation, and you want to start automating all of that validation. So you've got to make sure that it's not just writing the code. It's got to write the tests first, and then it's got to write the code so the code pass the tests. Now that's something that's been in software development for years, but it's important and strategic to enforce that in a kind of AI world. Then you want to, so that's just kind of the unit testing that developers would do normally. But then you want to make sure you've tested the system end to end, so it's firing up the browser, it's navigating around. You've got computer use that's come out now. So you want to automate all of that stuff. So now it's spending tokens and spending more time, actually firing things up and controlling things on your computer and running this application end to end. And then you want to really dial up the kind of the mop up tasks. So when as you're developing a feature, you want to make sure that you got the test, you got the end to end test, but you've also got the documentation, the architecture records. So it's gone from, isn't this cool? I can throw up something in 10 minutes that looks amazing to I need to get something that I can actually ship. And to have trust in the thing I can actually ship, I've got to 10x my token usage.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's like all these things. As this technology matures, there are levels to it. I think that's always been the case in technology. So it's an example, right? The way that you or I might use AI in our day to day is fine in most cases for kind of personal use or for, individual executive use. Uh, the way that we would use it to help us do our day to day work. But that doesn't scale to this is how everyone should use this thing all of the time. So, for example, another one is like maybe kind of, the vibe coding phenomena, which happened, well, it must be 12 months ago now. Everyone thought they could build something with a prompt, and you kind of can. But that doesn't scale to a enterprise level, production level type environment. I recently reverted back to using Obsidian for my note taking. I don't know if you've ever come across Obsidian. But basically, I mean, I used it years ago when I was still developing stuff. But it's a note taking app that builds stuff out in Markdown files. Now I
Right.
then switched to Apple Notes and became the Apple Note ecosystem. And I wrote a little skill recently to start converting my Apple Notes to Markdown files so that the AI could use it as its memory and that kind of thing. But I was like, "Well, I should just go back to using Obsidian," and then it's just, markdown files off the back, and then it's the OpenAI guy, the ex-OpenAI guy, Kapathi, is that his name? He
Yeah,
released he did a viral tweet recently about why he uses Obsidian as the brain of Claude, I think it was. And so I was like, "Okay, great, I'm cool again." But what's really interesting about that, and there was a whole discussion about, okay, maybe this kind of Obsidian Markdown memory type thing with index files and that kind of stuff. Maybe that replaces RAG, and RAG is no longer important, and we don't need vector databases and that kind of stuff. And that's true to a point, right? I don't need a vector database to run my personal AI usage and for it to remember all the things that are important to me. At a mid-sized organization, or especially at enterprise level, where you've got an awful lot more data than I would generate personally, you're not going to be able to run that off a bunch of markdown files. You still do need RAG and vector databases and that kind of stuff to kind of join those dots. So I think that's the journey that we're all on, both in terms of this is good from my personal level, but this is not going to work at scale, through
Right.
to this is what kind of works as the technology is in its infancy. But then as it matures, you kind of move from vibe coding to harness engineering to production development, that kind of stuff. And that's just the
Yeah.
journey that we're all on. And I think that journey is going to see organizations and individuals and organizations drive up their usage of the tokens, which is why the costs are going to keep going up. Because I've gone from summarizing a meeting transcript to, creating a knowledge base out of every meeting I've ever been in.
Oh,
Every day what's important, and that's just an auto task that runs every day. Bringing all these kind of data sources together, and that maturity curve, I think, is ultimately just going to keep pushing up the costs.
yeah. And we've not even really seen the kind of next wave of AI apps yet, and they'll just sit in the background chewing tokens as well. And in the early days, or now maybe, people are selling these on a plan. You pay your $20 a month, and you can access this thing, and it's chewing stuff in the background. But they're all going to suffer the same usage constraints. So either those prices are going to go up, or the way that they sell it will be different. Bring your own model. Maybe that's a thing. I don't know. But yeah, so all of this stuff is kind of is what's making the whole local LLM thing interesting. And these small models, the really small ones like the OpenAI personal identifiable information thing works really well, and it's really small. The the squished down frontier like models that I'm trying to run are so frustratingly nearly good, but not good enough.
Mhm.
There's still a big enough gap between the things that you can run on your desktop and the things that live in these massive data centers that you're not going to be able to wean yourself off the crack at the moment. There are lots of things now that you can do with these local LMs that are really surprisingly good that they're probably as good as GPT-4 level stuff, certainly as good as GPT-2 level stuff, and like you can run this on your own machine. But for the code, the really advanced stuff and the coding stuff, you're now at a point where if you have a software program that you're working on that's largely written, you can do some small refactors, you can do some bug fixing, you can introduce a trivial new feature just about with these local models, which is significant, right? It's significant, but you're not going to do your architectural planning and first large feature push. I don't think on these smaller models yet. They just fall over too often, and they're not very good being left alone unattended. And that's the other thing that the frontier models are really nailed. They're really good at doing long running tasks, and these local models are not.
Yeah, yeah. I guess model selection is going to become increasingly important, and again, something that most people are not even considering. We're all victims of, I guess, what magpie syndrome. Really, you kind of get distracted by the latest new shiny thing, and that's in currently. I guess that's what GPT 5.5. But do you need 5.5 for most tasks? Probably not. So lots of tasks you can do on 5.4. It's a lot cheaper, but individuals are never going to make those kind of decisions, right? So I guess there's
Oh,
going to be a play. There already is a growing play for this kind of AI proxy layer where you basically it's figured out on your behalf which model your request requires, and then goes off and uses the correct model to keep
yeah,
token usage
yeah, yeah.
down.
Yeah, and we're just starting to roll it out now for the first time. It'll be interesting, I think. And I don't know yet how good they are at routing requests to the appropriate models. We'll see. I suppose that we'll find out over the next few weeks as we sort of roll this out and experiment. Yeah, that's certainly the theory. That if you're giving it a summarization task, it's not going to route it to the most expensive model. But at the same time, a lot of these bigger models have that intelligence baked into them anyway. Probably not at the kind of coding level that we're using them at, but if you use ChatGPT on your phone today and you give it a simple task, it'll in the background it'll pick the cheapest thing it can to do the job.
Yeah. Talking about kind of maturity and where different organizations are, a few stories have coalesced for me over the last 2 or 3 weeks, which got me thinking a little bit about this. I don't know if you saw any of these, but some months ago now, UK Gov, in their wisdom, announced something called the Sovereign AI Fund. Did you hear about this? This
I
was
think I read
much
about that
razzment.
yesterday. Yeah,
Well, I think I wrote about it yesterday, so
right.
maybe you read it from me. So, no, I mean, yeah, so I think it was maybe back towards like the autumn statement or something. They announced they were going to invest 500 million in data centers and AI stuff to wean us off our addiction to US tech, basically. How do we remove this critical risk, but also all of the leakage of talent and money that goes across the pond
Maybe they
because
read
all these.
my maybe they read my articles then because I've been banging on about that for ages. The fact that the EU is just woefully indebted to American infrastructure and AI companies.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what the UK AI Sovereign Fund has been set up to address, and I think I think it was announced in the last budget. So anyway, last week, the week before, they announced that the first 80 million pounds of this 500 million is going to be released for UK startups to try and grab in 5 million chunks. So 5 million quid. If you're a UK AI startup, in particular public good type sectors, which might be healthcare or public services or transport or whatever they deem to be public good, you can apply for £5 million worth of investment from the UK sovereign uh, AI fund. Now, this fund is going to operate like a VC, kind of, and it's kind of a sovereign fund, kinda. Now, when you think sovereign fund, you normally think, well, okay, that's good because downstream, the UK gov is going to make stack loads of money out of this and get some commercial upside to help, pay our bills and the rest of it. It's
Right.
obviously not that way. So there's no commercial upside UK government at all. So it won't help us in any way. They do get to use whatever is produced for free, but there's no commercial upside other than that off the back of it. So it's kind of a sovereign wealth fund, but not really. And they're going to behave a bit like a VC, but again, there's no commercial upside. So again, kind of not really, but it supposedly gives you access to experts and
So
academic
so just to
institutes.
be clear, right? We know the government doesn't actually have any money. That's why we give the government money. So
Yeah.
they are spending £500 million of our money to try and turbocharge AI for no
Yeah, to
return.
capture the AI economy away from the US and keep that spend and that talent
Yeah.
in
So
the
there's this the advantage would be that because it would be to stimulate our economy um, via these startups, but the government is not making any money off of this. It's spending our money to do it. Yeah.
yeah, the idea that over the long term that UK PLC means that money stays in the UK basically, and we grow that part of our economy. So that's the theory. It feels a bit like a missed opportunity to me, but that's the theory. So that's what we're gonna do. However, it got me thinking. I saw another thing from, I think this came out of Amazon. I think Amazon did some research about AI adoption within UK organisations and the maturity of that. And it's a self-reporting survey, so you kind of get some crazy numbers. But this survey from AWS said that 24% of organizations in the UK are now at AI maturity. That number seems really high to me, but it's a
Mm.
24%. And by AI maturity, it's those that have self reported that a core part of their processes or decision making involves AI. Again, it seems really high to me, but let's put that to one side. That number has only gone up 1% in a year. So in 12 months, last 12 months ago, it was 23%, now it's 24%. Now, the broader adoption has gone up from 52% to 64%. Again, we don't worry too much about the numbers, but we seem to have in the UK a quite broad but shallow understanding of use of AI within business and what that means. So I think that basically, that means 64% of people have got Copilot licenses that are not really using, and 24% of organizations think, actually, yeah, no, we're using some stuff and it's working quite well. There's a big kind of adoption gap here. Now, the point of the AWS article was they were suggesting that that means that by 2030, there's 35 billion pounds worth of lost efficiency savings and economic growth that's disappearing because of this lack of adoption, this lack of understanding about how to use the AI we've already got. And so I'm wondering, and the point of the thing I wrote the other day was, okay, we're investing 500 million pounds in new AI, when actually we can't, as a UK, businesses don't know how to use the AI we've already got. And we've seen this in even within our own organization over the last 18 months. We've had to go on that adoption journey. But certainly with the clients that we're working with, the understanding of the power and the capability behind what they have beyond taking meeting notes and writing email summaries is very, very small. And so you got to wonder whether or not there is a broader opportunity here around helping organizations to adopt AI in a mature fashion to really understand the power of what they have. Now, this culminated, I was thinking about all these things, and this culminated, I think I saw it yesterday, but they announced it, I think maybe last week, is Anthropic have launched essentially an enterprise services company. It sort of comes alongside their partner program, but they're putting it in with some of the big SIs, the big five type organizations, and saying that, in a classic way that all these partner ecosystems have worked in the past, if you've worked with Microsoft or Google or someone, you can work with one of our partners, and they will go in and basically run a consultancy exercise with you, and they have access to certain resources within Anthropic. And Anthropic have spun up this new business with the likes of Goldman Sachs and BlackRock behind it as well, to basically create an enterprise consultancy for AI adoption. It feels like that's where we are. That's the bit that really needs to happen right now, and the UK government is probably a few steps behind, which maybe is understandable.
It's interesting because I was going to say OpenAI have done something similar but different with OpenAI Frontier. They released that months ago, but a similar idea. It's a services arm. They work with select kind of big companies, helping enterprise to understand how to use these models and build business systems with them. So they're buying human intelligence and consultancy into those organizations to help build that out. I guess maybe this is this kind of Anthropic's response, but also I don't think the UK government are ignorant of this education problem. They did launch an AI education website portal thing several months ago, which was atrocious. Like it was just, I mean, in fact, it was so bad that one of these guys I follow on TikTok, dare I say, I do partake of TikTok occasionally, was just absolutely, you know, so angry that it was such poor quality that he went and vibe coded a better one, and he scraped all of the data off the UK Gov site, and he augmented it with loads of other stuff, and to prove that he could do something in 4 days that was of a better quality than the UK government had managed to pump out, and he did. So yeah, that they had a half-assed attempt at this, but all they really did was basically signpost you to free courses or other sites that say they do stuff. Yeah, I guess where do people go when they don't know what to do? Where do, who are the the go-to kind of AI consultancies? I don't think that UK Gov site is very helpful in answering that question.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that those there's still a need for that. You know, the overriding narrative around professional services for months has been it's dead, or it's at least on life support. It's a matter of time. But what's clear is that once you get beyond being able to dabble and getting on the excitement curve of how cool this technology is, when it actually comes to try and implement it, you do need the help of intelligent humans to show you what's possible, how it works in your organization, how to join the dots, how to actually get something out of this technology.
You know what though? It's not just that. I mean that's absolutely the case. But I am being asked a lot now, where how can we as an organization put down on paper our policy on AI? What should it be? How do I know? I mean, they don't even know what language they're using when they say, how do I know if I should adopt a new model? Or what process does there have to be for something to be accepted into our organization? What are the guardrails that we have to, you know, what's the policy we have to write and give to our staff to protect our own asses so that if they do something wrong, we can say, but we had this policy. What is safe AI? And you're seeing this a lot in obviously finance and law.
Mm.
But I've been seeing that in those sectors for a while. I'm now starting to see this everywhere. And it's in one sense it makes a lot of it makes a lot of sense. Of course you need this stuff. All big businesses need this stuff, but it's just so annoying as well. It's like, how do you have a policy about whether you should adopt a new version of Microsoft Word that they've released through Office 365? No. You you automatically just take that point one version number without blinking because cloud is understood and it's safe and it's gone through this a decade ago or 2 decades ago. And it's just like we're going through this all again now with AI because it's this fear thing. It's a new tech thing. It's gonna it winds me up disproportionately to how it is actually needed and it is valuable in an enterprise.
You have to you have to just take away all the assumptions, I suppose. I mean, it made me laugh. After I saw this article, I then went to the product page that Anthropic put up about their consultancy services, and it basically had a standard kind of consultancy product page type. What is this? How does it work? That kind of thing, you know. And the very kind of opening paragraph was, it said what is the Anthropic services? It said a typical engagement starts with a small team working closely with the customer to understand what it is that their operations are required to do. Then their own developers will work with them to solve to deploy Claude into those environments. Right. Okay. So it's a standard consultancy play, but we need to spell that out again. You have to kind of go right back to the beginning
Yeah,
because
that's you've just basically made my point for me, right? So these policy documents that everyone are asking for, they end up sounding like that. I mean, that's a services one, but the policy one it's just a load of words, and all it translates to when you get right down to it is like we do some really basic stuff that we know we have to say that we do, and we've approved these models, and this is how we think about and use AI. And it's like a 10-page document or something, and it's just a bunch of noise and words and ass covering.
Yeah, it's an interesting reminder that behind all of the magic and the hype, there is still we've got businesses trying to make money providing their service and selling their products. There's some too new technology that needs to be deployed now because why wouldn't you? But there's some fundamental professional services underneath it that need to help you get from what do what you do well, required by what they do well, and that's just never going to change. And it was a really timely reminder.
Yeah.
I saw something else which was kind of aligned to this. And remember Mr. Sunak, as we're talking politics, Rishi Sunak, our short-lived
Yeah.
prime minister.
Remember him?
He's always been a big champion of AI, and I think he must be on some various AI think tanks type, profit-making machines at the moment. Anyway, he was on the BBC the other day, and he quote really stuck with me. He said that he's privately being told by CEOs that he knows that flat is the new up. And they were talking about the impact of AI on organizations, what that's going to mean for jobs and processes and how it all works. He said he's being told that flat is the new up. Flat or reduced headcount, but more growth, obviously. It's like, interesting. Okay, flat is the new up. And that is something, we're seeing. I don't know if you saw, I think Coinbase was the most recent one I saw of people. I think they're dropping 14 or 15% of the workforce,
14%.
by expecting revenues to continue to grow. This narrative is sticking. Is it just an obvious side effect of this maturity curve? When organizations go through this maturity curve, is obvious, predictable outcome that flat is the new up?
But let's unpack that though, because flat is the new up makes it sound okay. It makes it
Yeah.
sound like it's a steady state, but that's not what's happening. For them to stay flat, they are reducing headcount. So these are jobs that are disappearing. So the business is staying flat, yay. But the people, it doesn't seem like that for them. It seems like it's not flat to go up, it's down to stay flat.
Mm.
They're all jettisoning bodies, aren't they? We've seen Coinbase was the latest at 14%. And they explicitly, what's interesting about Coinbase is that you saw about a year ago this kind of wave of redundancies where they were sort of blaming AI, but not really AI. And we just got to lean down and prepare for the future. But the Coinbase tweet was very specific and it talked about stuff like, we can now do stuff in days that used to take weeks or months. We simply don't need the same number of people that we used to need. Because AI is making more decisions or helping with the decision process, we also don't want to have managers anymore. Unless you are a super senior special AAA manager person, we don't want you in our organization. We want people that can manage, but they have to be player coaches. That was the exact words I said, player coaches. And that sounded dramatic, but to us, I guess now who have been living through this for the last couple of years, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. The bit that he's getting a load of crap for, and the bit that I thought made me do a double take, was when he said, we now have non-technical people in our organization shipping stuff into production. And I was like, what? That's not good. And even if you
You
do,
change
you
crypto
don't want
wallet
to be
provider
saying
at that
that,
point.
especially not if you're making a crypto platform. Crikey, can you imagine?
You don't want non-technical people doing anything. This point. And to kind of bring that kind of back to where we started as this little part of the conversation, it feels a little bit like turkeys are voting for Christmas here. The UK, quite rightly, quite laudably, almost exciting, saying here's a stack load of money, we're investing in the AI future. But at the same time, we're saying as we all mature in this AI future, flat is a new up, right? So we're going to invest in the UK economy, which is ultimately going to end up with a lot less people employed in the short to medium term, which is probably not going to be good for the UK economy. Is that the circle? Is that what's happening?
This is so, obviously we've been talking about this theme for years now, but it is starting to it's starting to have some stronger voices on either side. I don't know if you saw, but Sam Altman came out this week or last week, really anti this narrative that AI was going to destroy the jobs market and take jobs away. It's like, no, it's a huge opportunity. It's going to create loads of jobs. We're not going to not work. There's not this kind of dystopian future. He's very optimistic, and of course he would be, wouldn't he? Because he has to be.
Does he?
But
Does he believe
he
that though?
certainly was.
Because he's really changed. He's really changed his tune, hasn't he? And I don't know if you've seen any of this stuff in the US, but he is like a figure of hate at the moment in the US. Some guy firebombed his house the other day, and then when he didn't get caught, he threw firebombs at the OpenAI office. There's like protests against. A lot of it's around data centers going up in poor communities and that kind of stuff. I mean, the way their kind of infrastructure works is different. A data center goes up in a plot of land somewhere in rural America, all of a sudden the local town hasn't got any water anymore because it's all gone straight to the data center. So it's a bit tied up in that. But it does seem to be a big, as you say, maybe it's becoming more polarized. Maybe that's what we're seeing. But there's a big anti-AI push coming from certain areas of the society. Maybe that's inevitable. Is maybe that's why as well that Sam is changing his tune, because he was always previously very much, this is a utopian future, we're all going to drink coffee and write books or whatever if you want to do.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we will keep finding ways to work because I think that's what humans do, despite the fact they protest. I think it's what we do. It's what we were made to do, and I hope that's not controversial. But there is this disruption, right? The nature of what we do and what we call work and how we work and what we spend our time doing is going to change. There might be, and that's the uncomfortable bit. It's like we don't need as many as this type of job before, so it disappears and people are affected. But then over time, new jobs emerge that we couldn't have even have foreseen before. And I think that's what we're going through now. I don't know. I don't know what someone's got to pay the taxes, isn't they? I can't have AI and robots
Exactly.
running around doing everything.
One more thing I wanted to talk about today is quite a big question: is mythos real? What do you think? Tell us,
Oh,
tell us what you know
maybe
about mythos.
maybe they're gaslighting us with the name.
Yeah,
Maybe it's just
exactly,
a myth, boss.
exactly.
No, I think it's real.
You think it's real?
I think it's real. There's enough data coming out about it to indicate it's real. It's appearing on various benchmarks. Um, with super maxing some of these benchmarks, although it's obviously not being given its proper name. It's real. It's a big model by all accounts. I don't know how big GPT 5.5 is. I don't think it's in the same class. I think OpenAI have this thing called Spud, which is their equivalent of Mythos. But the question really is, does it deserve the hype in terms of this, you know, end of the world because it can spot 0-day vulnerabilities in every bit of software ever in a matter of minutes?
Because it could just be an incredible publicity stunt, right? We've got this magic model. We're only going to give it to these big financial institutions because we're scared it's going to break them. That could be huge publicity. Or the other alternative is actually all the frontier companies have got one of these things. It's just Anthropic have decided to take a different approach.
You know what? I think it's lots of people want to debunk this and say it's marketing. I am really not so sure. I think maybe there's something bigger going on here. They absolutely have given it to a select number of people first. So before, everybody got the model. Everybody got the model on release day. Now there's like 40 companies and they've been given access to it ahead of the rest of the world. They're also suggesting that actually, even if they couldn't release it to the general public because it costs too much, no one would pay. It burns so many tokens that no one would
Right.
be able to afford it, or the price would have to be so high. So there's that. But I wonder if this is a bit of a taste of the future, in that we're used to getting models as soon as they're fit for public consumption. Maybe the releases start as they start getting more intelligent, as these bigger models come out, 10x the number of parameters that we're using today, that have taken months or years to train, and millions and millions and millions of pounds. Maybe they do take much longer to hit us, and maybe they do get released to a select few organizations first. And the reports at the NSA are all over Mythos at the moment, and using that and experimenting with it. Yeah, I don't think it's all just a big marketing stunt. I suspect there's some truth in it.
What's this space, I guess. Any more?
No.
No. All right. Then. I think that's the pod.